The night was dark and filled with the steady beeping of machines that measured life and death. In the crowded emergency room of the city hospital, Lila Carter fought against time and exhaustion. Her arms trembled as she performed chest compressions on an elderly patient, each push a desperate plea for a life to continue. The harsh fluorescent lights revealed sweat on her brow and deep lines of worry on her face. Every second counted, and the sound of the monitor made her heart pound in her ears. Amid the chaos of urgent calls and shouted instructions, Lila's eyes darted to the break room through a cracked door. There, curled on a worn-out couch, lay her little daughter, Ella, fast asleep. The sight of Ella's small, rising chest brought both comfort and agony. Lila's mind raced with the fear that if she failed here, she would lose the one person who made every struggle bearable. For months, Lila had battled not only the long shifts and endless emergencies, but also the heavy burden of Ella's fragile heart. The little girl had been born with a serious heart condition that needed a complex surgery, a surgery that Lila could barely afford. Every day at the hospital, Lila worked to save others, even as her own daughter's future hung by a thread. Bills piled up like the many lives she had tried to save, and the hospital's corridors echoed with the silent pleas of parents who could do nothing but hope for a miracle. That night, as Lila wiped her aching hands on a faded scrub top, a tall figure stepped from the shadows of the corridor. The stranger wore a neatly pressed suit and held an air of calm that contrasted sharply with the frantic pace of the emergency room. His voice was soft yet clear as he said, "Miss Carter, may I have a word?" Lila, still caught in the grip of her duty, hesitated but nodded when he spoke again. "I overheard your conversation about the insurance and the surgery for your daughter," he said quietly. "I have a proposal that might help both of you." Lila's heart pounded with a mix of suspicion and desperate hope. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to steady her voice despite the swirl of emotions. The man introduced himself as Adrian West. He explained that he was willing to cover the full cost of Ella's surgery, but there was a catch. "I need you to be my wife at least for a while," he said gently. "This is not charity. I have some personal reasons and business matters that require me to be seen as a family man. In return, your daughter gets the best care available, and I promise nothing will come between us." The offer was as shocking as it was tempting. Lila had always prided herself on her independence and her love for her daughter, but the mounting medical bills and the risk of losing Ella pushed her to consider this strange proposal. With tears welling in her eyes, she asked, "You want me to marry you? I don't understand. What do you get out of this?" Adrian's eyes were kind but firm. "I simply need to appear as a responsible husband and father. There is no hidden agenda beyond that. We will live separate lives, and I will not interfere with your work or your care for Ella. This is purely a business arrangement to help your daughter survive." In the sterile light of the hospital corridor, Lila felt both fear and a spark of hope. The idea of marrying a stranger made her stomach twist with uncertainty, yet the thought of losing Ella was even more unbearable. After a long pause, she whispered, "I need to think about it." Adrian nodded. "I understand. But please, remember that time is not on our side." With that, he left as quietly as he had arrived, leaving Lila with a decision that felt heavier than any shift she had ever worked. Over the next few days, the hospital buzzed with the news of Lila's difficult choice. The memory of that unsettling night stayed with her as she juggled the relentless pace of emergencies with stolen moments spent by Ella's bedside. The little girl, with wide eyes and a soft smile, often asked, "Mama, when will I get to run and play like the other kids?" Each time, Lila's heart ached with the reminder of the looming surgery. The bills, the insurance calls, and the constant fear of losing her daughter filled her nights with endless worry. One rainy afternoon, when the hospital corridors felt even colder than usual, Adrian West reappeared. This time, he was not just a mysterious stranger in a suit. He carried a folder of documents and a calm determination that made Lila's hands tremble again. In a quiet, almost empty corner of the hospital cafeteria, he laid out the details of their agreement. "This is a legal contract," he said simply. "We agree to live as husband and wife for the next year. You will receive full insurance coverage for Ella's surgery and any future treatments. We will keep our lives mostly separate, but as soon as things settle, we can discuss what this means for us. The terms were laid out in simple language: separate bedrooms, minimal interference, occasional attendance at family events to maintain appearances. Lila listened intently, her mind reeling from the idea that her daughter's life might depend on marrying a stranger. But behind the cold words of the contract, she sensed something more in Adrian's steady gaze, a promise of stability and care that she had long yearned for. At first, their home life was a mix of awkward silences and polite exchanges. Lila returned to her small apartment after long shifts at the hospital, finding Adrian already there, unpacking a few suitcases and arranging a modest workspace. Their first morning together was quiet. Over a simple breakfast of toast and eggs, they discussed the day ahead in short, clipped sentences. Yet even in that simplicity, small moments of warmth began to emerge. Adrian asked about Ella, and Lila found herself explaining the little details of her daughter's favorite stuffed animal, a worn-out bear that had seen better days. Adrian listened closely, and for the first time, Lila wondered if there was more to him than the cold businessman he had seemed to be. Days turned into weeks, and the strict rules of their agreement slowly loosened. Adrian proved to be thoughtful and kind. When Lila returned home late from a grueling shift, he would leave a warm cup of tea on the counter. He started to learn about the small joys that filled Lila's life, a handwritten note here, a gentle smile there. In return, Lila began to see that beneath Adrian's calm exterior lay a man who cared deeply about the well-being of those he loved, even if he had not yet allowed himself to feel love for her. Still, a thread of tension wound through their interactions. Late at night, when the hospital's lights dimmed and the quiet took over, Lila would hear Adrian's phone buzz with messages that hinted at secrets and big decisions. She would catch him looking at his computer screen with a serious expression, his eyes distant for a moment before he returned to their daily routine. Lila knew he was hiding something, but she also knew that her daughter's life depended on the help he provided. The more she tried to understand him, the more she realized that sometimes hope came wrapped in mystery. As Ella's surgery day approached, the hospital buzzed with a mix of anxiety and determination. Lila worked extra shifts and barely slept, driven by the fierce need to save her daughter's life. In the waiting room before the surgery, Lila held Ella's tiny hand, whispering promises of a bright future. Adrian stood quietly beside them, his presence a steady reminder that they were not alone. The tension in the room was palpable as the doctors prepared for the operation. Every beep of the monitor felt like a countdown, and every shadow crossing the sterile floor added to the weight on Lila's heart. Then, in the midst of the chaos of the operating room, the unexpected happened. A sudden technical glitch sent the monitors into erratic flashes, and a brief power fluctuation left the surgical team scrambling. In that brief moment of crisis, Adrian stepped forward. With calm authority, he made several phone calls and, within minutes, arranged for backup power and additional equipment. The surgical team worked faster, their efforts synchronized with the renewed hum of machines. Lila watched from the waiting area, her eyes wide with disbelief. Who was this man really? In that moment, the careful layers he had built around himself began to unravel. After what felt like an eternity, the surgery was over. The doctors came out with relieved smiles, telling Lila that Ella was stable and would soon be in recovery. The news felt like a burst of light after a long, dark tunnel. Lila's gratitude was overwhelming, and she turned to Adrian, whose calm eyes shone with quiet satisfaction. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved my daughter's life." Adrian's smile was gentle. "I only did what needed to be done," he replied, though his tone carried a warmth that made Lila's heart soften. In the days that followed, as Ella slowly recovered in the hospital's pediatric ward, Lila and Adrian spent more time together. They shared simple meals and talked about small dreams, a new beginning, a safe home, and a future free from the constant fear of loss. Lila began to see the truth behind Adrian's actions. His quiet determination was not just about a business deal. It was about caring for someone in need. With each shared story, each laugh, and each moment of silent understanding, their bond grew stronger. One afternoon, as soft sunlight filtered through the window of their small living room, Lila found herself asking the question that had lingered in her mind. "Adrian, who are you really?" she asked softly, her eyes searching his. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he took a deep breath and confessed, "I have kept my past hidden because I did not want you to think I was only here for the deal. The truth is, I am not just a businessman. I am a billionaire, and I have spent much of my life protecting my own. When I heard about your daughter's condition, I knew I could help, and I wanted to help. I never meant to hide who I am." The words struck Lila like a tidal wave. $1 billion, vast wealth, and all the power that came with it. This was a man she had never imagined would walk into her life. Yet, as she looked into his honest eyes, she saw only a man who had been lonely and guarded, a man who was now willing to risk everything for a little girl's smile. The revelation was both startling and comforting. All the hints, the late-night phone calls, the careful choices, made sense now. Adrian's wealth was not a tool for greed, but a means to offer hope. In that quiet moment, the last of Lila's doubts melted away. She realized that their marriage had begun as a desperate measure, a choice born of fear and necessity. But over time, it had grown into something deeper. Their lives, once defined by hardship and loss, were now intertwined by a shared purpose and a budding love that neither had planned for. As the weeks passed, Ella grew stronger with each passing day. The hospital visits became less frequent, and soon she was able to play in the small yard of their apartment complex, her laughter echoing in the warm afternoon light. Lila and Adrian found themselves planning a future that went beyond the terms of their original agreement. They began to imagine a life filled with shared responsibilities, quiet evenings, and a love that was as real as it was unexpected. One sunny morning, as they sat together at a small table in a local diner, Adrian reached across the table and took Lila's hand. "I know our beginning was not what either of us would have chosen," he said in a low, sincere voice, "but I believe that every day with you makes me a better man. I love you, Lila, and I love Ella. I want to build a future with both of you." Tears filled Lila's eyes as she squeezed his hand back. "I never imagined that a desperate choice would bring me the love I needed," she replied softly. "I'm grateful every day for this chance to have a family." Their journey was not without its challenges. There were moments when old fears resurfaced, moments when Lila worried that the wealth Adrian had might come with strings attached, or that his secrets would drive them apart. But each time they faced those moments together, they learned that love often grows in the hardest soil, nurtured by trust, honesty, and the willingness to take risks for those we hold dear. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, Lila looked at her daughter playing on the living room rug. Ella's laughter was light and free, a sound that filled their small home with hope. Lila knew that the scars of the past would never fully fade, but now they were replaced by new dreams and new promises. The suspense that had once haunted every decision was gone, replaced by the steady beat of a family's heart. In time, Lila and Adrian came to realize that their marriage, once formed out of necessity, was now a true bond of love. They planned small celebrations, picnics in the park, family dinners, and even a modest anniversary party with close friends. The hospital, which had been a place of pain and desperation, now felt like a distant memory as they built a life filled with genuine care and laughter. Standing together on the porch one cool evening, with Ella asleep in the room above, Lila whispered, "I never thought I would find love like this. You saved my daughter, and in the process, you saved me." Adrian brushed a tear from her cheek and replied, "Sometimes, the hardest choices lead us to the best gifts in life." Their simple words carried the weight of all they had endured, and in that moment, the promise of a bright future shone clearly in the fading light. Lila Carter, once a lone fighter in the endless battle of the emergency room, now found strength in the arms of a man who had become her partner, her friend, and her love. Together with Ella, they looked forward to days filled with laughter, hope, and the promise of new beginnings. And while the road ahead might still hold challenges, they faced it as a family born from desperation, sealed by trust, and grown in love. In the end, the unsettling nights in the hospital and the dark moments of despair gave way to a life where every beat of Ella's heart was a testament to the strength of a mother's love and the unexpected kindness of a stranger turned savior. Their story, once marked by uncertainty and fear, now sparkled with the gentle light of hope and the certainty that love, even when it begins in strange circumstances, can heal even the deepest wounds. And so, with the promise of tomorrow shining in their eyes, Lila, Adrian, and little Ella stepped forward into a future where every day was a chance to love, to heal, and to cherish the gift of life.